Jackson Allard disembarked from the cramped shuttle feeling like he'd just spent 5 hours in a blender with the spinning blades replaced by terrible pop music. He rubbed his neck, glanced around, and took in the marvel or disaster, depending on your sense of aesthetics. That was the Veridia space station. Giant metal hoops spun in a lazy orbit around the core, like someone had decided to build a cosmic slinky and never bothered to finish. It seemed held together by spit and misguided optimism. He half expected it to fall apart if he sneezed too hard. The airlock hissed shut behind him, the sound somehow both welcoming and ominous, much like his ex-wife. "Ah, Veridia at last," he muttered, as if it had been worth the wait. The pinnacle of alien architecture and questionable hygiene. Solara, the station's sentient AI, wasted no time making her ethereal presence known. "Welcome, Jackson Allard," she purred in his mind. If voices could butter toast, hers would leave cholesterol levels skyrocketing. "We detect elevated stress levels. May I offer you some relaxation protocols, perhaps a soothing simulation of a Terran beach?" "No thanks," Jackson replied. "Last time I tried one of those, I ended up with sand where the sun doesn't shine." A chuckle echoed in his brain, like a cat with a sense of irony. "As you wish." Navigating through the station, Jackson couldn't help but wonder if the aliens had designed it as a labyrinthine test of patience. Corridors twisted and turned with no apparent logic, like a drunk had sketched them during a bout of artistic fervor. Every now and then a door would slide open just to reveal a broom closet, or, more often than not, a maintenance drone that seemed about as cheerful as a hangover. So, Jackson muttered to himself, dodging a particularly sullen-looking alien who resembled a cross between a squid and a traffic cone, "I'm supposed to bring peace to this mess. No pressure." The diplomatic meeting room was a masterpiece of chaos theory. Representatives from all corners of the galaxy, each with their own brand of uptightness and a face only an alien mother could love. Jackson scanned the room, trying not to gag on the mix of perfumes, pheromones, and what might have been burnt toast. He took his place, sitting gingerly in a chair that seemed designed by someone who hated spines. A particularly haughty alien, with a face like a melted candle and a voice that could strip paint, leaned over. "Ah, the human diplomat," it sneered. "I hear you are quite adept at conflict resolution." Jackson forced a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, we humans have a knack for sensing tension. Comes naturally when you think the universe is out to get you." The alien diplomat snorted, a sound like a clogged vacuum cleaner giving up on life. "And yet here you sit, amidst our superior species, hoping for peace." Jackson smirked. "Well, you know what they say. If you can't beat him, beg him not to blow you up." The candle-faced alien seemed unimpressed, but Jackson had bigger concerns than winning a pissing contest with something that probably didn't have a bladder. Jackson shifted in his seat, trying to find a position that didn't feel like a medieval torture device. "Look, the situation's simple," he started, leaning forward like a conspirator about to spill state secrets. "We're standing on the brink, and while I love a good brink as much as the next guy, maybe we could step back a bit." A gelatinous mass representing another faction burbled ominously. "Human, your kind is known for aggression." "Aggression, more like enthusiasm," Jackson shot back, grinning like a shark. "Sure, we've blown up a few things, but who hasn't had a bad Monday?" A collective murmur of dissent rippled through the room. It seemed that not every species shared humanity's penchant for humor as a defense mechanism. Jackson sighed, leaning back. "Look, the truth is, none of us want this to go south, or whatever direction it is in space." "I lose track." Another alien, this one looking like a cactus, had mated unceremoniously with a peacock, leaned in. "And what do you offer for peace, human?" Jackson spread his hands wide. "How about not dying in a fiery explosion? Always a crowd pleaser." Solara's voice whispered in his mind again. "Jackson, your sarcasm levels are off the charts." "Shall I engage the charm protocol?" "Not now, Solara," Jackson thought back. "I'm in the middle of a routine save the galaxy speech." The meeting dragged on like a funeral procession that nobody wanted to attend. Each faction had its list of grievances, demands, and threats, a veritable shopping list of interstellar discontent. Jackson did his best to appear interested, nodding at intervals, injecting humor to diffuse tension, and generally trying to avoid looking like he was mentally planning his escape route. As the talks reached what could optimistically be called a lull, there was a sudden commotion at the entrance. Jackson's hand went instinctively to the stun pistol at his side, a reflex born of being a human in a universe that usually preferred him dead. In burst a figure, all angles and frantic energy, looking like he'd dressed in the dark after a fight with a blender. Jackson Allard," the newcomer yelled, skidding to a halt, eyes wide with a mix of fear and manic determination. "Oh great," Jackson muttered under his breath. "It's the cavalry, and it looks like it's had a bad day." The room fell silent, all eyes on the newcomer who was panting like he'd run a marathon through a hailstorm. "We have a problem, a big galaxy-sized problem." Jackson sighed, rubbing his temples. Of course we do. Wouldn't be a normal day without one. The newcomer gulped, then spoke words that would haunt Jackson far longer than any alien threat. There's been an assassination attempt on the peace delegation. Silence fell like a guillotine blade, swift and deadly. Jackson felt the weight of the room's collective gaze, each species' suspicion hanging in the air like a bad smell. Well, Jackson said with a forced grin, I guess things just got a whole lot more interesting. He stood up, glancing around the tense assembly. Let's get this sorted before someone else gets the bright idea to speed up the extinction process. The crowd erupted into chaos, each faction clamoring to point fingers, argue, or in some cases, start reaching for weapons that definitely weren't part of the diplomatic dress code. Jackson took a deep breath, feeling the familiar weight of impending disaster settle on his shoulders, heavy as a death row inmate's last meal. All right, Solara, he thought, time to earn my paycheck. Solara's voice came through, calm and collected, the eye of the storm. Proceed cautiously, Jackson. This situation appears volatile, you don't say, Jackson replied, stepping into the fray with the kind of confidence only a human facing certain doom could muster. Just another day in paradise. As Jackson stepped into the fray, he felt a twinge in his side, as if the universe had decided to jab him with a reminder of his mortality. Then, with all the subtlety of a drunk freight train, the lights flickered, the ground trembled, and a sound like 1,000 angry bees filled the air. In that split second, Jackson registered a flash of light, a brilliant, searing beam that cut through the air with the finality of a guillotine's kiss. And just like that, Jackson Allard, human diplomat and professional wise-ass, ceased to be. The room erupted into chaos, as if someone had detonated a stupidity bomb. Diplomatic decorum went out the airlock, as delegates flung accusations and insults faster than a bargain bin sale at a cut-rate weapons depot. A few even had the presence of mind to dive for cover, proving that self-preservation knows no species. Solara, the station's AI, immediately kicked into high gear, her voice booming with the authority of a disappointed grandmother. All personnel, Veridia is now in lockdown. Please remain calm while we initiate containment procedures. Calm, in this madhouse, a weaselly alien with eyes like boiled eggs spat, barely audible over the din. We've just witnessed an assassination. Who's going to take charge? Enter Captain Aria Voss, her entrance marked by the kind of silence that only a reputation like hers could command. With a face like granite and a posture that screamed, I eat chaos for breakfast, she strode into the room, her presence cutting through the turmoil like a scythe. All right, everyone, shut it, she barked, her voice a whip crack that silenced the room. We've got a dead diplomat, a station in lockdown, and I don't have time for your panic attacks. The delegates, now more sheepish than belligerent, shifted uneasily. Voss's gaze swept the room, her eyes like twin laser sights, promising swift retribution to anyone stupid enough to cause trouble. Solara, Voss said, her tone demanding and direct, give me a status update. Lockdown is in effect, Captain, Solara replied, her voice the epitome of unruffled calm. All exits are secured and internal sensors are active. However, there is interference with the surveillance cameras. Of course there is, Voss muttered, rolling her eyes. Why not add a little technical sabotage to the mix? It's like a party, but with more murder. A low, rumbling growl drew Voss's attention to the gelatinous alien faction leader, who was wobbling with indignation. This act of barbarism will not go unanswered, it burbled, its gelatinous form quivering with each word. Voss crossed her arms, unimpressed. Yeah, save the melodrama for your memoirs. Right now we need to find out who thought playing sniper at a peace talk was a good idea. Captain Voss, Solara interjected, I have located the origin of the interference. It appears to be an external device, likely placed by the assassin. Voss grunted, her expression siring like milk left out in the sun. Great. Clever bastard, aren't they? The room was still on edge, delegates whispering among themselves, eyes darting around like they'd been promised a surprise visit from an unpleasant relative. Voss could smell the fear, the kind that turns rational beings into headless chickens. Listen up, she announced, her voice slicing through the tension. I need cooperation. Solara will assist in the investigation, but I expect all of you to stick to your designated areas. No wandering off, no funny business. You're all suspects until proven innocent. Her gaze was hard as steel, and if any of you are thinking about playing hero, don't. I've got enough problems without adding idiot wrangling to my list. A protocol droid skittered forward, its limbs twitching as if perpetually caught mid-jitter. Captain, protocol states that. Stuff the protocol, Voss interrupted. This isn't a drill, it's a clusterfuck. We improvise. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. Besides, I don't remember asking for a lecture on regulations from a tin can with legs. The droid hesitated, then wisely retreated, clattering into the background where it could mumble about order and procedure to its heart's content. Voss turned to Solara. I need a team to start sweeping the station. Focus on the control room first. Whoever's behind this won't stick around for tea. Already dispatched, Captain, Solara responded, her efficiency as smooth as her synthesized voice. And I've initiated scans for any unauthorized transmissions. Voss nodded. Good, keep me posted. With that, she turned her attention back to the room of jittery diplomats. All right, folks. I need a volunteer, someone familiar with Jackson's movements before he became, well, perforated. A tall, lanky human with a nose that could double as a coat rack raised a hand. I might be able to help, he said, his voice as dry as a desert. And you are? Voss asked, her eyebrow arched. Name's Rook, he replied, shuffling forward. I was Jackson's aide. More like his babysitter, really. Voss sized him up, noting the tired lines etched on his face, the kind that spoke of too many late nights wrangling diplomats with a penchant for trouble. All right, Rook, you're with me. Let's see if we can untangle this mess before someone else gets the bright idea to start shooting. As they left the room, the atmosphere remained taut, tension hanging in the air like a thick, ominous fog. Voss led Rook through the twisting corridors of Veridia, her stride purposeful, her mind already spinning through possibilities like a gambler sifting through a deck stacked with bad hands. So, Rook, Voss said, breaking the silence with a lopsided smirk, tell me about Jackson. Any enemies I should know about, besides the usual suspects, of course. Rook shrugged, his expression one of resigned exasperation. Jackson had a talent for pissing people off, but nothing that warranted a laser to the face. Most of the time, it was just words, sharp ones, but still, Voss grunted. Words can be deadlier than weapons in this business. People tend to forget that until someone gets hurt. As they approached the control room, the corridors around them were eerily silent, the usual clatter and hum of station life stripped away under lockdown. Voss didn't like it. Silence had a way of amplifying danger, turning shadows into threats and echoes into harbingers of doom. Solara, Voss called, any luck on that interference? We're closing in on the source, Captain, Solara replied. It appears to be originating from the upper maintenance levels. Rook fidgeted, his gaze flicking nervously down the corridor. Maintenance levels, that's a labyrinth. Perfect place for a saboteur to hide. Perfect place to trap them too, Voss countered, her mind already formulating a plan. If we can corner them, we might just get some answers. They reached the control room, greeted by a team of security personnel already stationed there, their expressions a mix of readiness and unease. Voss gave them a nod, stepping inside to survey the situation. Screens lined the walls, each depicting a different sector of the station. Most showed nothing but static or empty hallways, the effects of the interference still evident. Voss's fingers tapped against her sidearm, a subconscious rhythm born of anticipation. Rook, she said, turning to the aide, any idea who'd have it out for Jackson? Or is this just a case of wrong place, wrong time? Rook sighed, running a hand through his hair. Honestly, it could be either. Jackson was supposed to mediate between factions, but he had a habit of stepping on toes and claws and whatever else was available. Voss chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Yeah, well, looks like someone finally stepped back. Hard. Captain, Solara's voice cut in, we have movement on the upper levels. Security teams are converging, but the suspect is mobile and moving fast. Naturally, Voss muttered. Wouldn't want this to be too easy. She turned to the lead security officer, a burly figure with a face like a thundercloud. Get your men ready. We move now. The officer nodded, signaling his team to prepare. Voss led the way, Rook trailing behind, his nervous energy palpable. As they moved through the station, Voss's mind raced, piecing together the puzzle. Assassination attempts, lockdowns, and now a chase through the twisting corridors of a floating tin can. It was the stuff of nightmares, and she had a front-row seat. Rook, she said as they moved, stick close. I don't need two mysteries to solve in one day. Understood, Rook replied, his voice tinged with a weary acceptance of his lot in life. The security team spread out, their footsteps echoing through the corridors like a marching band at a funeral. Voss kept her senses sharp, every instinct attuned to the environment, ready to pounce at the first sign of trouble. Captain, Solara's voice came again, this time edged with urgency. The suspect is attempting to access the escape pods. Not on my watch, Voss growled, breaking into a run. They rounded a corner, the corridor opening up into the docking bay where the escape pods were housed. Voss could see the figure, a shadow slipping through the shadows, desperately trying to reach salvation. Stop right there, Voss shouted, drawing her weapon. The figure hesitated for a split second, just enough for Voss to close the gap, her team flanking her as they cut off any chance of escape. Drop whatever tech you're using and step away from the pods, Voss commanded, her voice a thunderous decree. The figure turned, revealing a face hidden beneath a helmet, their body language radiating defiance. A standoff then, with the tension so thick it could be sliced with a knife. "You're not leaving this station," Voss said, her eyes locked on the suspect. "Not until we get some answers." The suspect hesitated, weighing their options. Then, with a fluid movement, they tossed a device to the ground, the interference source, no doubt, and raised their hands in surrender. "Smart move," Voss acknowledged, her relief tempered by the knowledge that the real work was just beginning. As the security team moved in to secure the suspect, Voss allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. One crisis contained, but the question of why still loomed large, a shadow that refused to dissipate. "So Lara," Voss said, "lockdown status, maintaining until further notice, Captain." So Lara replied, her voice as serene as always. "Good," Voss murmured. "Let's see what secrets our friend here is hiding." As the suspect was led away, Voss returned her attention to the now silent corridor. The tension was still there, a lurking presence that refused to be banished. But for now she'd taken a step towards resolution. Another day, another crisis averted, and in the grand tradition of humanity, she'd meet the next disaster head-on, sarcasm in full supply, because in the end, what else was there to do? The corridors of Veridia Station, usually bustling with the diplomatic equivalent of a zoo on caffeine, were eerily silent, like a school when the bell rings for summer break. Captain Aria Voss led the way back from the docking bay, her mind working overtime, piecing together the jagged fragments of chaos into something resembling a coherent picture. Well, as coherent as anything could be when you were essentially babysitting universe-class diplomats who'd just witnessed an assassination. Rook lagged slightly behind, his expression suggesting he was either deep in thought or trying to recall if he'd left the stove on back home. "So, Captain," he said, catching up, "what do we do now?" "I mean, besides praying the rest of the station doesn't decide to implode." Voss shot him a sideways glance, the kind that suggested sarcasm was about to follow. "Well, Rook, I figured we'd have a nice cup of tea, a long chat with our suspect, and solve this whole mess in time for supper. What do you think?" "I think sarcasm doesn't suit you, Captain," Rook replied, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "Good thing I'm not here to look pretty then," she quipped back, turning her attention to Solara, the station's AI. "Solara, give me a rundown. What the hell just happened?" Initial analysis suggests the suspect was acting under orders. Solara's voice came through the speakers with the kind of calm that made one suspect she was secretly enjoying the drama. "However, the communication logs are encrypted, and I require more time to decode them." "Great. Nothing like a bit of bureaucracy to spice up a murder mystery," Voss muttered, rubbing her temples. "Keep me posted, Solara, and see if you can find out where those orders came from." "Certainly, Captain. In the meantime, a message has arrived for you," Solara continued, her tone as smooth as ever. "It appears to be from an anonymous source. Would you like me to read it?" "Oh, why not?" Voss replied, making a sweeping gesture with her hand. "Might as well add cryptic messages to today's buffet of delights." Message as follows: "The snake eats its own tail. Jackson was the first, but not the last. Look beyond the obvious, or the station will become your tomb." End message. Rook blinked, looking as if someone had just informed him he was heir to a fortune in haunted real estate. "Well, that's ominous. Ominous. That's downright cheerful compared to the usual death threats I get," Voss replied dryly. "So, Lara, trace the message if you can. Though I'm sure it'll lead us straight to a dead end." "Already attempting, Captain," Solara acknowledged. "However, the message was routed through several anonymizing networks. It may take some time. Time's the one thing we don't have," Voss muttered, more to herself than anyone else. They continued down the corridor, the oppressive silence of the station pressing in on them like an ever-present reminder of the ticking clock. Voss could almost hear the gears in her mind grinding, trying to align the pieces of this puzzle into something that made sense. "So what's the plan, Captain?" Rook asked, his voice echoing slightly in the empty hallway. "Plan's simple," Voss said, a grim smile playing on her lips. "We're going to have a chat with our dear guest back in the lockup. See if some friendly persuasion can get us any closer to the truth. And if it doesn't, then we improvise. Didn't you hear? I'm quite the fan of it." They reached the security wing where their suspect was being held. A couple of guards stood outside the cell, their expressions suggesting that they'd rather be anywhere else but here, which, truth be told, was a sentiment Voss could empathize with. She nodded to them, signaling it was time for a little tête-à-tête with the mystery guest. Inside the cell, the suspect sat on a bench, hands cuffed but posture relaxed, as if being caught was just another Tuesday on the job. The helmet had been removed, revealing a face that was as nondescript as they came, a perfect blend of features that had no business standing out in a crowd. "Comfortable?" Voss asked, folding her arms as she appraised her prisoner. The suspect shrugged, a wry smile twitching at the corner of their mouth. "I've had worse accommodations, though the room service leaves something to be desired." Voss chuckled. "Well, this ain't a five-star hotel, and you're not here on holiday. Care to explain what your little escapade was about?" Or should we skip to the part where I make life very uncomfortable for you? The suspect leaned back, an air of nonchalance about them that was either bravado or stupidity. Orders are orders. You know how it is. Funny thing about orders, Voss replied, her tone smooth as silk. They tend to come from someone. Care to enlighten us? Or should we start playing the guessing game? Silence stretched between them, the kind that was heavy with unspoken words and hidden threats. The suspect finally sighed, as if indulging a child. Even if I told you, it wouldn't matter. You're playing in a game much larger than you realize. Really? Voss raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. I've been told I have quite the imagination. Why don't you help me fill in the blanks? The suspect's eyes flickered, a brief flash of something fear, perhaps. Let's just say there's a lot more at stake here than one diplomat with a big mouth. Voss nodded slowly. A conspiracy then. Someone wants chaos, power, the usual suspects. Think bigger, the suspect said, their voice tinged with something bordering on genuine warning. Think extinction. Rook, who'd been silent, shifted uneasily, the word echoing ominously in the small space. Extinction, that's a bit dramatic, even for assassins. The suspect smirked. Is it? You're all sitting on a powder keg and someone's about to light a match. Voss studied the suspect's face, searching for any hint of deception, but they were a master of neutrality, giving nothing away. Who? Who's behind this? The suspect shook their head. By the time you find out, it might not matter. Voss straightened, a hard glint in her eyes. We'll see about that. As they left the cell, the weight of the conversation settled heavily on her shoulders. A conspiracy, extinction. These were words that carried a heft she wasn't keen to ignore. She'd seen plots within plots before, but this was something else. Captain, Rook said, breaking the silence as they walked away. Do you really think this could be as big as they say? Doesn't matter what I think, Voss replied, her voice firm. What matters is finding out the truth before it's too late. Right, Rook nodded, though his expression was anything but certain. So what's next? Next, Voss echoed, a cynical grin spreading across her face. We go play detective. Time to follow the breadcrumbs and hope they lead us somewhere less explosive. They headed back to the control room, Voss's mind racing with possibilities and pitfalls. Solara greeted them with her standard efficiency, ready with updates. Captain, I've managed to partially decrypt the communication logs, Solara announced, her voice a welcome distraction from the dark thoughts swirling in Voss's mind. The orders were relayed from a location within the station, but the exact source remains unclear. Figures, Voss sighed. Anything else? There's been unusual activity in the diplomatic sector, Solara continued. Several delegates have been accessing restricted files. Voss's eyes narrowed. Any guesses why? Given the current situation, I suspect some may be attempting to cover their tracks or gather information. Or both, Solara replied. Guess we better pay them a visit, Rook suggested, arms crossed. Can't have them plotting behind the scenes while we're busy dealing with everything else. My thoughts exactly, Voss agreed, her tone laced with determination. Let's go rattle some cages. They made their way to the diplomatic wing, the tension in the air palpable as they approached the quarters where the delegates were housed. Voss wasn't surprised to find the atmosphere thick with suspicion, paranoia spreading like a virus among the gathered representatives. A couple of delegates, one with features as sharp as a scalpel, the other a hulking mass of scales and muscle, stood in whispered conversation, their eyes darting around, ever wary. Evening, gentlemen, Voss greeted, her voice carrying an edge that suggested she wasn't here for pleasantries. Mind if we have a word? The slimmer delegate, whose name tag read Ambassador Krell, forced a smile that looked as sincere as a politician's promise. Captain Voss, how can we assist you in these troubling times? I was hoping you'd tell me, Voss replied, cutting straight to the chase. Seems some of you have been busy snooping where you shouldn't. Care to explain? The larger delegate, a creature known as Grothax, let out a low rumble, his voice like gravel being crushed underfoot. We are simply ensuring our safety, Captain. With recent events, one cannot be too cautious. Cautious? Funny, I call it espionage, Voss retorted, her patience wearing thin. Save me the diplomatic dance. What's really going on here? The two exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Krell sighed, his facade slipping slightly. Truth is, Captain, not all of us trust the integrity of this station's leadership, or its security. Voss crossed her arms. And you think poking around in restricted files is going to help with that? Knowledge is power, Krell replied smoothly. And right now, power is survival. Well, let me make one thing clear, Voss said, her tone ice cold. If I catch any of you meddling where you shouldn't, it'll be a short trip to the brig. Understand? Both delegates nodded, though their expressions were far from compliant. Voss turned on her heel, motioning for Rook to follow. As they walked away, Rook shook his head in disbelief. You think they're telling the truth? Half-truths, maybe, Voss replied, her mind already shifting gears. But something tells me they know more than they're letting on. They returned to the control room, Voss's thoughts swirling. A conspiracy, cryptic messages, and now suspicious diplomats. It was a cocktail of intrigue that could rival the worst political nightmares she'd encountered. So Lara, she said, breaking the quiet that had settled over them, keep monitoring those delegates. Let me know if they pull any more stunts. Understood, Captain, Solara replied, her efficiency a cold comfort amid the chaos. Voss leaned against a console, her mind racing with possibilities. The situation was a tangled web, and the more she pulled at the threads, the more it unraveled into chaos. But one thing was clear: she needed answers, and she needed them fast. Rook, she said, turning to her aide, time to dig deeper. We've got a station full of secrets, and I intend to uncover every damn one of them before this is over. He nodded, determination mirrored in his eyes. Let's do it, Captain. Before someone else beats us to it, with renewed resolve, they set to work, sifting through data and clues, determined to stay one step ahead of the storm brewing around them. In the grimdark corridors of Veridia, the hunt was on, and Arya Voss wasn't about to let the shadows swallow her whole. Not today, not ever. Voss stood in the control room, her boots planted firmly on the station's durasteel floor, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down on her shoulders. Sabotage, diplomats playing cloak and dagger, and now a cryptic warning of extinction. It was the trifecta of bullshit she definitely hadn't signed up for. So Lara, run a full diagnostic, she ordered, eyeing the monitors like they were about to sprout fangs and bite her. Make sure no one's been nosing around where they shouldn't. Running diagnostic now, Solara replied, her AI voice smooth as ever, completely unfazed by the chaos swirling around her. Rook leaned against a console nearby, his arms crossed, looking for all the world like a man who'd rather be elsewhere, preferably on a beach, with a drink in hand and not a care in sight. Ever get the feeling someone's watching you, like more than usual? Only every damn day, Voss shot back. Why, feeling paranoid. Not paranoid if they really are out to get you, Rook replied, scratching his chin thoughtfully. Before Voss could reply, Solara's voice cut through the room like a knife. Captain, I've detected unauthorized access to my systems. A subroutine was activated, likely an attempt to obscure digital footprints. Voss cursed under her breath. Great, just what we need, an AI with a split personality. Can you isolate it? Rook asked, sounding more concerned than usual. Or is this one of those too little, too late situations? I'm attempting to quarantine the subroutine, Solara assured them, though there was something almost too calm about her tone. However, the program is sophisticated. It's a considerable challenge. Voss slammed a fist against the console, frustration boiling over. We've got a saboteur on board. Someone's playing puppet master, and we're the marionettes. Or the clowns, Rook suggested with a dry chuckle. Speak for yourself, Voss retorted. I prefer reluctant hero. As they bantered, the intercom crackled with static, a sound that promised nothing good. Captain Voss, this is Lieutenant Tannies. We have a situation in the diplomatic sector. Tensions are. Well, let's just say they've escalated. Define escalated, Voss demanded, not particularly in the mood for surprises. There was a pause, filled with the kind of silence that usually accompanied bad news. The Gleason and Ventari representatives are blaming each other for the assassination attempt. It's about 2 minutes away from going full-blown civil war. Voss pinched the bridge of her nose, trying to stave off the headache clawing its way to the surface. Wonderful, exactly what we need right now. Want me to bring the popcorn? Rook offered, attempting levity. Only if you want to wear it, she snapped back. Let's go play referee before this station becomes a battleground. With a nod, Rook followed her out, their pace brisk as they navigated the twisting corridors of Veridia. The station was an architectural marvel, if your idea of a marvel involved metal hoops and the occasional ominous creak. Hygiene was a rumor, much like peace and quiet. In the diplomatic sector, the atmosphere was electric, a powder keg just waiting for a spark. The Gleason delegate, a wiry creature with skin that shimmered like oil on water, was midrant, their voice a high-pitched buzz. Opposite them, the Ventari representative loomed, all scales and menace. You and your kind have always been snakes, the Gleason accused, their tone dripping with venom. This has your fingerprints all over it, the Ventari bared sharp teeth in a display of aggression. Our kind, we wouldn't sully ourselves with such petty treachery. Unlike you, we have honor. Voss stepped between them, hands raised in a universal gesture of calm the hell down. All right, that's enough playground politics. You two need to cool it before someone gets hurt. The Ventari scoffed, a sound like rocks being ground together. And what do you propose? More empty words and false promises. Voss eyed him with a level stare. No, I propose you shut your mouths and let me figure out who's pulling the strings. Unless you'd rather this station turn into a reenactment of who killed the diplomat. Rook added his own brand of wisdom. Takes two to tango, folks, or in this case, two to start a space brawl. The Gleason let out a frustrated hiss but backed down, folding their spindly arms. Fine, but we're watching you, Ventari scum. Likewise, slime, the Ventari growled, though the tension in the room had dialed down a notch. Now that we've all shared our feelings, Voss said, her sarcasm sharp enough to cut, Let's try not to kill each other before dinner. With the immediate crisis averted, Voss and Rook retreated to a quieter corner, both painfully aware that the peace was tenuous at best. Think they'll stay off each other long enough for us to solve this mess? Rook asked, his skepticism evident. If not, we can just sell tickets and make a fortune, Voss quipped. But seriously, we need to uncover who's behind this before the station tears itself apart. So Lara, any progress on that subroutine? Still working on it, so Lara replied. The code is unlike any I've encountered. It suggests a level of sophistication atypical for most species. So we're dealing with a genius, Rook deduced, frowning, or a psychopath, or both. Lovely, Voss muttered. Just when you think the universe can't get any more complicated. As they headed back to the control room, Voss's mind whirled with possibilities. The saboteur was smart, and they had access to the station's systems. It was a deadly combination, one that threatened everything she was trying to protect. Rook, she said, her voice low and serious, we're running out of time. We need to get a handle on this fast. Yeah, he agreed, the gravity of the situation sinking in, before we're all caught in the blast radius. Back in the control room, Solara was still hard at work, the hum of machinery the only sound accompanying their thoughts. Voss stared at the screens, each one a window into the chaos they were trying to understand. Captain, Solara spoke up, a hint of urgency in her voice, I've detected a potential security breach in the docking bay. Anomalies in the logs suggest unauthorized access. Voss felt her heart skip a beat. Someone's trying to get off the station, or bring something onto it, Rook suggested darkly. Let's hope it's not door-to-door salesmen, Voss muttered, already moving toward the exit. So Lara, keep monitoring. Let me know if anything changes. Of course, Captain. The corridors of Veridia seemed longer than usual as Voss and Rook made their way toward the docking bay, the sense of urgency a palpable force propelling them forward. The station creaked ominously, as if aware of the tension simmering within its walls. As they approached the docking bay, Voss's hand instinctively went to her sidearm. She wasn't taking any chances, not with everything spinning so wildly out of control. The bay itself was a cavernous space, designed to accommodate ships of various sizes and eccentricities. Right now, it was eerily quiet, like the calm before a storm. See anything unusual? Voss asked, her eyes sweeping the area for signs of movement. Rook shook his head. All quiet on the western front, which is probably a bad sign. Yeah, like the eye of a hurricane, Voss agreed, stepping further into the bay, her senses on high alert. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, moving with the kind of deliberate grace that set Voss's instincts on edge. The figure paused, their face obscured by a hood, and for a moment the universe seemed to hold its breath. Stop right there, Voss called out, her voice echoing through the space. Show yourself. The figure hesitated, then slowly lowered their hood, revealing a face that was as familiar as it was unexpected. Jackson, Rook blurted out, surprise written all over his face. What the hell are you doing here? Jackson Allard, human diplomat and professional wiseass, grinned with the kind of charm that could sell ice to an Eskimo. Fancy meeting you here. I was just about to ask the same thing. Voss narrowed her eyes, suspicion coiling tightly in her chest. Care to explain why you're skulking around the docking bay? Jackson shrugged, his expression one of guileless innocence. Figured I'd take a stroll, see the sights. Didn't expect to find you two playing hero. Cut the crap, Jackson, Voss snapped. This isn't a social call. What do you know about the sabotage? Jackson sighed, his facade slipping just enough to reveal the tension beneath. More than I'd like to, but sharing's not exactly encouraged when you're being watched. Watched? By who? Rook pressed, his curiosity piqued. Jackson glanced around, as if expecting someone to leap out of the shadows. Let's just say there are eyes everywhere, and some of them aren't very friendly. Voss exchanged a look with Rook, her mind racing to piece together the puzzle. You think someone's using you to get to us? Jackson nodded, a grim smile on his lips. Bingo. And they're not playing nice. The sound of footsteps interrupted their conversation, a reminder that time was not on their side. Voss made a snap decision, one that could either save them or doom them all. All right, Jackson, you're coming with us. We're going to figure this out and you're going to help. Jackson smirked, though it lacked its usual bravado. Lead the way, Captain. I've got nothing better to do. With Jackson in tow, they made their way back to the control room, their steps echoing through the empty halls. The station felt like a ticking time bomb, and Voss knew that every second counted. So Lara, Voss said as they re-entered the control room, we've got another player in this game. Meet Jackson Allard, our resident diplomat and potential informant. Pleasure to meet you, Solara replied, her tone politely neutral. I assume you'll be assisting us in resolving the current crisis. That's the plan, Jackson replied, his grin back in place. Assuming we don't blow up first. Voss turned her attention to the monitors, the data scrolling across the screens like a digital tapestry of treachery. The situation was spiraling, and she needed every advantage she could get. All right, folks, she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing around them. We've got a saboteur to catch, a station to save, and about a million ways this could go wrong. Let's get to work." With that, they plunged back into the chaos, determined to unravel the mystery before the universe decided to unravel them. The control room felt like the inside of a tin can left out in the sun, the air thick with tension and the vague scent of impending doom. Voss glanced at the monitors, each ticking down a doomsday clock of its own. The station hummed like a restless beast, ready to explode. Beside her, Jackson leaned casually against a console, his easy grin at odds with the chaos unraveling around them. You'd think he was waiting for a bus rather than neck-deep in a potential catastrophe. "Nice place you got here," he said, his eyes scanning the flickering screens. "Love what you've done with the lighting. Moody yet functional." Rook snorted, folding his arms. "Wait till you see the jacuzzi. It's a real killer." Voss shot them both a look that could wither crops. "Focus, boys. We've got a saboteur to catch, a station on the brink, and Solara's gone quiet. She's supposed to be analyzing this mess, and now even she's giving me the silent treatment. Silent AI. Always the life of the party," Jackson commented, his gaze still wandering. "Solara," Voss barked. "Status report." Static crackled through the speakers, then Solara's voice, though it lacked its usual smoothness. "Apologies, Captain. System diagnostics show unauthorized interference is compromising my capabilities. It's affecting all station systems." "Great," Voss muttered. "Just what we need, an AI with stage fright. She must be picking up tips from the diplomats," Rook added, trying for levity but hitting closer to anxiety. Voss ignored him, her mind racing through options like a gambler on a losing streak. The station was hanging by a thread, and the scissors were in the hands of someone with a sinister sense of humor. Jackson, never one to miss a chance to needle, tilted his head. "So, any idea who our mystery meddler is, or are we going to draw straws?" "We're working on it," Voss growled, rubbing her temples. "Solara, I need you to pull yourself together." "What's causing the interference?" "The interference is emanating from a secondary relay within the station's substructure," Solara replied, her voice gaining a little strength. "However, I am unable to pinpoint the exact location." "Why not?" Voss demanded, frustration biting at her patience. "Because," Jackson chimed in, "that would be too easy, and where's the fun in that? If we don't get the systems back online, we're heading for a train wreck," Rook said, leaning over a console and tapping a few keys, each one an attempt to coax cooperation from the failing systems. "Except there's no train and the wreckage involves us," Voss retorted, her gaze hardening. "We've got to find that relay and shut down the interference. Otherwise, we're sitting ducks. Then let's go play hide and seek with a station full of potential suspects and a temperamental AI," Jackson said. "Who needs a vacation when you've got a death wish?" Voss sighed, her resolve tightening like a vise around her chest. "Jackson, you've got a knack for getting into places you're not supposed to be. Care to put that talent to good use, breaking and entering?" "My mom always said I was good at something," Jackson replied, pushing off the console with a swagger that was only slightly forced. "Rook, you're with him," Voss ordered, her tone leaving no room for debate. "I'll coordinate from here and try to keep Solara in the game." "Fantastic," Rook said with a lopsided grin. "I always wanted to be a sidekick in someone else's disaster." As the two men left, Voss took a deep breath, turning back to the control panels. The screens blinked with warnings, each alert another reminder of just how screwed they all were. Her hands moved over the controls with the familiarity of someone who'd spent too many nights staring down catastrophe and not enough solving it. "Solara, do what you can to stabilize the systems. Patch me into the station-wide comms. We need to keep the rest of the crew informed and calm." Attempting to comply, came Solara's reply, though her voice wavered, glitching slightly. "Captain Voss, please be advised. Additional security breaches are likely." "Wonderful," Voss commented dryly, her fingers dancing across the panel. "Maybe I'll name my memoir How Not to Run a Space Station." "Sounds like a bestseller," Solara said, her attempt at humor a little less effective given the circumstances. With the comms finally patched through, Voss leaned into the microphone. "Attention all personnel. This is Captain Voss. As you're probably aware, we're experiencing technical difficulties. Rest assured we're working on a resolution. Please remain calm, and if you see anything suspicious, report it immediately. Remember, the last thing we need is panic. Well, more than we already have." She ended the transmission, hoping her words would do more than echo in empty corridors. Hope was a funny thing, fragile and often misplaced, but it was all she had right now. Meanwhile, Rook and Jackson prowled the underbelly of the station, their footsteps echoing in the dimly lit corridors. It was a maze of wires and conduits, the kind of place where shadows loomed larger than life. "Ever get the feeling this place was designed by someone who hates people?" Jackson asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Given the smell, I'd say this place hates itself," Rook replied, his tone half joking, half serious. "You think we'll find the relay before the station goes kaput? Wouldn't that be nice?" Jackson said, pausing to peer down a side passage. but my luck usually leans more toward screwed in the worst possible way. That's the spirit, Rook said, clapping him on the shoulder. Keep thinking positive. As they moved deeper into the station's bowels, the air grew colder, the walls slick with condensation. Each step felt like a step toward some inevitable showdown, and neither was keen on seeing how it ended. Back in the control room, Voss fumbled through systems that only responded half the time, each flicker of life a false promise. Solara's voice was now a constant crackle in her ear, the AI usual calm replaced with an edge of uncertainty. Captain, a new anomaly detected, Sublevel 3 near the old reactor access. Voss's heart skipped a beat. That's where Jackson and Rook are heading. Can you give me visuals? Attempting now, Solara said, though her words were punctuated by static. Warning, system integrity compromised. You're telling me, Voss muttered, her eyes fixed on the monitor as the grainy images resolved into something recognizable. Two figures moving cautiously, their progress slow but determined. Jackson, Rook, can you hear me? Voss called through the comms. Loud and clear, Captain, Jackson replied, his voice tinged with static. We're nearing the reactor access. It's colder than my ex's heart down here. Good, Voss said. Solara's picking up something. Could be our relay. Keep your eyes open. Roger that, Rook replied. We'll see if we can't make friends with whatever's down here. Voss tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong, focusing instead on the faint promise of success. If they could shut down the interference, restore Solara to full power, then maybe, just maybe, they could keep the station from tearing itself apart. Meanwhile, Jackson and Rook arrived at the reactor access, the heavy door looming like a sentinel. Jackson tugged it open with a grunt, the metal protesting with a screech that set his teeth on edge. Welcome to the inner sanctum, Jackson said, stepping inside. Or the scene of our untimely demise. Rook followed, eyes scanning the cramped space. It was a tangle of pipes and control panels, each one coated in a layer of neglect. Think the relay's in here? Rook asked, his breath misting in the chill. Only one way to find out, Jackson replied, moving toward the central console. If this thing blows up, I'll haunt your ass. Together they worked quickly, prying open panels and tracing wires with the precision of men who knew that time was their enemy. It was a game of cat and mouse, each second another tick in the countdown to disaster. Back in the control room, Voss felt the weight of the station pressing down on her, the silence stretching taut. Solara's voice cut through the tension, though it was softer now, like a whisper. Captain, unauthorized access detected in the mainframe. Voss's blood ran cold. From where? Inside the control room. There was a moment of disbelief before Voss turned, her gaze sweeping the room. In the corner, someone moved, someone she hadn't noticed before. It was Rook, or what looked like him, his face slack, eyes vacant. Rook, Voss called, her voice sharp with confusion. What are you doing? But Rook didn't answer. Instead, he moved toward the main console with a deliberate slowness that set every alarm in Voss's mind screaming. Stop, she ordered, her hand going to her sidearm. The figure paused, then slowly turned. It was Rook, but not the Rook she knew. His expression was twisted, a cruel caricature of the man she'd worked beside. Found you, he said, his voice wrong in a way that was hard to define. Voss raised her weapon, the reality of betrayal sinking in like a knife. Who are you? Someone who's tired of playing the game, he replied, stepping closer. Don't, Voss warned, her finger tightening on the trigger. He stopped, a smile creeping across his face. Too late for that, Captain. Before she could react, the lights flickered, the power surged, and the room plunged into darkness. Voss stood frozen, the echo of his laughter clinging to the shadows. Somewhere in the bowels of Veridia, Jackson and the real Rook worked frantically, trapped in a race against the clock they couldn't afford to lose. Rook and Jackson stumbled through the maze of Veridia's underbelly, the air as frigid as a tax collector's soul. Jackson cursed softly, imagining his breath crystallizing midair. You know, Rook, he drawled, if I had a cred for every time someone tried to kill me on a diplomatic mission, I'd be, well, just about as broke as I am now. But I'd have more good stories. Yeah, try explaining this one to the folks back home, Rook replied, his sarcasm as sharp as a laser scalpel. They'll love to hear how you almost saved the universe by getting lost in a space station's intestines. Jackson smirked, kicking a loose wire out of his path. It's called adding character, or trauma. Whatever makes for a better memoir title. As they continued, the corridors seemed to narrow, constricting like the bad vibes at a family reunion. Each turn felt like a descent into a more twisted version of hell, complete with dubious stains and ominous leaks. I love what they've done with the place, Jackson said, grimacing as a droplet from an indeterminate source splashed onto his shoulder. Really evokes that abandoned asylum in space vibe. Rook, scanning the surroundings, nodded toward a junction up ahead. The reactor access should be just past this lover's lane. You ready for whatever fresh hell we find? Born ready, Jackson replied, though his confidence felt as thin as the station's air supply. Or maybe I was born reckless. Either way, it's worked out so far. Mostly, meanwhile, in the control room, Captain Arya Voss wrestled with her own demons, one of which had just stood up and revealed its false face. She squinted through the dim light at the imposter, a chill settling in her gut. "All right, spill," she said, gun steady but voice laced with icy determination. "Who sent you, and why should I let you keep breathing?" The Rook lookalike chuckled. "Let's just say I'm here on behalf of Pardas with vested interests in seeing this station go up in flames, metaphorically speaking." "How creative," Voss shot back, sarcasm sharpening her words. "And what do they pay you for this?" "Hope it's enough to cover a good facial reconstruction, because you're going to need one." He took a step back, hands raised in mock surrender. "Can't blame a guy for trying to make a living in this galaxy. Opportunities are scarce, you know," Voss snorted. "Yeah, like morals in a politician's pocket." Her mind raced, piecing together the fragments of betrayal, sabotage, and the assassination that had thrown the station into chaos. "You're working with whoever's behind the hit on Veridia's top brass, aren't you? No point denying it now, is there?" he replied, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Clock's ticking, Captain." "Then let's make it count," Voss said, lowering her aim just enough to make him flinch, then firing a warning shot that ricocheted off the floor. The sound cracked like thunder in the confined space, an audible promise that she wasn't bluffing. "Now sit tight while I figure out how to untangle this mess." While her fingers danced across the console, attempting to wrest control from the saboteur's grip, Solara's voice hummed through the room, her digital presence like a ghost in the machine. "Captain, systems on the brink of failure. Multiple breaches detected. Tell me something I don't know," Voss muttered, sweat beading on her brow. "Can you buy us some time?" "Anything," attempting temporary lockdown of compromised nodes, Solara replied, her voice a blend of calm and chaos. "Success uncertain. Story of my life," Voss said, her focus narrowing to the task at hand. Her mind raced through options, weighing the slim odds of survival against the inevitability of systemic collapse. If she couldn't stabilize the station, it wouldn't matter who the saboteur was working for, they'd all be space dust. Back at the reactor access, Jackson and Rook's search for the relay had turned into an impromptu treasure hunt, each clue more infuriating than the last. "I swear," Jackson grumbled, "whoever designed this place needs an intervention. Or at least a slap with a logic manual." Rook, prying open another panel, muttered, "Or they just had a really twisted sense of humor. I mean, who wouldn't put vital systems smack dab in the center of a labyrinth only a Minotaur would love?" Their banter was cut short when Jackson's hand brushed against a hidden circuit, the faint hum of power tickling his fingers. "Bingo," he said, the word dripping with cautious triumph. "I've found something." Rook leaned in, examining the tangle of wires and circuits. "That's got to be it. Looks jury-rigged enough to be sabotage grade." Jackson nodded, peeling back layers of insulation like a surgeon exposing a wound. "Let's see if we can't perform some amateur electrical surgery and shut this puppy down." Back in the control room, Voss's fingers flew over the console, her every move a calculated risk. Her mind spun a web of possibilities, each thread connecting to the larger conspiracy. Somewhere in the chaos, she hoped to find a path to victory, however slim. "Captain," Solara's voice interjected, "additional anomalies detected near the station's communication arrays." Voss paused, an idea beginning to crystallize. If communication arrays are being targeted, they might be trying to send a signal out. "Or jam one." "It is possible," Solara affirmed, her voice stabilizing as systems recalibrated under Voss's guidance. Voss considered her options. She needed to outmaneuver them to turn their own tactics against them. "All right, Solara, let's play a game. Divert remaining power to boost our internal comms. Let's see if we can't send a message of our own before they do." "Understood," Solara replied, her tone reflecting a newfound determination. With a plan taking shape, Voss turned her attention back to the imposter, who watched her with a mix of amusement and unease. "So do you want to make this easy and tell me what your friends are planning, or do we have to do this the hard way?" he sneered, leaning back against the console as if he owned the place. "You don't have enough time to play 20 questions. My advice, say your goodbyes." "Oh, I've got plenty of time," Voss said, her voice dripping with mock cheer. "You, on the other hand, are about 5 minutes from becoming my personal chew toy." The imposter's smirk faltered as he realized she wasn't bluffing. Her resolve was a tangible thing, a weapon sharpened by desperation and a refusal to lose. Meanwhile, in the reactor chamber, Jackson and Rook worked in silence, their movements synchronized by necessity rather than camaraderie. "I think if we reroute this here," Jackson muttered, twisting a wire with cautious precision, "we can cut off their access." Rook nodded, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill. "And if we're wrong, then we'll just have to improvise," Jackson replied, his tone blending confidence with the grim reality of their odds. As the final connection clicked into place, a hum of energy pulsed through the relay, a symphony of circuits realigning in unexpected harmony. "That should do it," Jackson said, allowing himself a small smile. At least until we find out how badly they've booby-trapped us. Rook chuckled dryly. You really know how to sweet-talk a crisis, don't you? Comes with the territory, Jackson replied, his voice laced with gallows humor. Now let's get back topside and see if we've bought Voss enough time to save all our sorry hides. In the control room, Voss's fingers hovered over the panel, her mind a battlefield of strategy and survival. With Solara's help, she initiated a station-wide lockdown sequence, sealing off critical areas to prevent further breaches. Captain, communications boosted, Solara reported, her voice unwavering now. Ready to transmit on your command. Voss took a deep breath, steeling herself for the final push. Send a message to all personnel. We're still in the game. Fight back. Don't let them win. As the message broadcast through the station, Voss turned her gaze back to the imposter, who now looked decidedly less smug. Looks like your friends underestimated us, she said, her words a challenge wrapped in steely resolve. He shifted, unease flickering in his eyes. You can't win this, Voss. Watch me, she replied, her tone a blade cutting through his bravado. The room fell silent, the tension a living thing coiled around them. Voss knew the stakes, understood the thin line between triumph and disaster, but she also knew the power of human resolve, the tenacity that could turn the tide when all seemed lost. In the depths of Veridia, Jackson and Rook retraced their steps, their journey now a mad dash against time. The corridors felt less oppressive, the air less suffocating, as if the station itself sensed the shift in momentum. You think Voss has got it under control? Rook asked, his voice echoing in the tight space. If anyone can pull a rabbit out of a hat, it's her, Jackson replied, his tone a mix of admiration and sarcasm. Or at least pull a gun from under the table. Rook snorted. That's comforting. Kind of as they rounded the final corner, the control room loomed ahead, the sight of Captain Voss standing firm a beacon of hope in the chaos. Jackson, Rook, Voss greeted, relief coloring her words. Good timing. Wouldn't want to miss the grand finale, Jackson quipped, his smile as sharp as ever. Voss nodded, the imposter now secured and the station on the brink of recovery. We've got a chance to turn this around, she said, her gaze steady. Let's make it count. Together they faced the storm, each of them a testament to the human spirit's unyielding will. They were bruised, battered, but not beaten, not yet. And as Voss initiated the final protocols to reclaim the station, she knew that whatever happened next, they would face it head-on, with the kind of stubborn courage that only comes from staring into the abyss and deciding to flip it the bird. In the grim dance of survival upon Veridia, the tide began to turn, and amidst the chaos, a flicker of hope dared to burn. As the control room hummed with tension thicker than a politician's promise, Captain Arya Voss knew she was dancing on the knife's edge of disaster. The imposter, cuffed and brooding in the corner, added to the ambience of impending doom, like a sullen teenager grounded on prom night. Don't suppose you'd care to share your evil monologue now, Voss quipped, the sarcasm as sharp as a laser scalpel. Might be your last chance to gloat before I ruin your day. The imposter, still trying to muster a facade of arrogance, sneered back. I don't do monologues, Captain. Bad guys in movies have given it a bad rap. Voss rolled her eyes. Figures. The one time I hope for some exposition, I get stonewalled. She turned back to the console, her fingers flying over buttons and touchscreens like a virtuoso pianist in a dive bar. Solara's AI presence buzzed in her ear, the station's digital ghost refusing to rest. Captain, the anomalies have recalibrated. It seems they're trying to override communications once more, Solara reported, her tone blending unsettling calm with urgency, like a therapist on speed. Of course they are, Voss muttered, her mind spinning conspiracies like a spider on caffeine. Why sabotage one part of the station when you can ruin the whole damn thing? Back at the reactor maze, aptly named given its delightful mix of claustrophobia and insanity, Jackson, Allard, and Rook hustled through the cramped corridors. Rook, sporting a new bruise courtesy of a poorly placed bulkhead, grumbled as he jogged. Next time, remind me not to volunteer for anything involving tight spaces, Rook said, wiping sweat from his brow. I feel like I'm in the world's worst game of hide and seek. Jackson, the station's unofficial tour guide through hell, chuckled. At least it adds some excitement to our otherwise dull lives, right? Besides hide and seek, Death Edition has a certain ring to it. Yeah, a ringing sound like impending doom, Rook shot back. But hey, keeps the blood pumping. As they reached the control room, they were greeted by the sight of Voss managing more crises than a junior diplomat at a peace conference. The station's emergency lights bathed the room in an ominous red, like the universe's way of saying, Danger, Will Robinson. Ah, there they are, Voss said without looking up, her voice as dry as a Martian summer. Right on time to witness our glorious victory, assuming we don't implode first. Jackson leaned against a console, catching his breath. We heard there was a party. Thought we'd crash it, Voss glanced up, a hint of a smile curving her lips. Hope you brought something to drink. We're fresh out of anything but tension and bad jokes. Rook gestured to the bound imposter. And who's this, our party crasher? Voss nodded, folding her arms. Meet Mr. Mysterious. He was all set to broadcast the mother of all bad decisions. Jackson, ever the diplomat, or at least a reasonable facsimile thereof, stepped toward the imposter. So, care to tell us what all the fuss is about? I promise not to take notes. The imposter's smirk faltered, the bravado slipping like a cheap toupee in a windstorm. You think you've won. You haven't even scratched the surface. Scratch, Rook echoed, his tone incredulous. I was hoping for at least a dent, maybe even a dent with a fancy paint job. Voss's gaze shifted to the control panel, her mind already a few steps ahead, plotting like a chess master on steroids. With a deft move, she engaged the station's encrypted communication system. So Lara, patch me through to our less-than-friendly neighborhood alien factions. It's time for a little diplomacy. So Lara's voice was as smooth as ever, despite the chaos. Channel open, Captain. Proceed with caution. Voss activated the comms, her voice carrying the weight of authority and a hint of mischief. This is Captain Voss of the Veridia space station. Before you all start exchanging fireworks, let's have a chat about why that's a terrible idea. A chorus of voices crackled through the speakers, each representative sounding more disgruntled than the last. She could almost see their faces, a gallery of scowls that would make even the most hardened diplomat flinch. Captain Voss, a particularly grumpy voice intoned, this is Commander S.H. Kral of the Xylan Coalition. Your station is a hive of treachery and peril. Commander, Voss replied, her voice a blend of honey and venom. I assure you, we're more of a hive of bad coffee and worse decisions. But treachery, that's just a Wednesday for us. Jackson leaned closer, whispering, You sure you want to antagonize them? Voss shrugged. Keeps them on their toes. Then back to the comms. Look, someone here decided to play God with our systems, trying to spark a little interstellar tiff. And I, for one, prefer my space without added explosions. Another voice chimed in, Velnica, leader of the Zurian Ascendancy. Your words mean little, Captain. We demand proof. Ah, proof, Voss said, with the air of someone pulling a rabbit from a hat. Fortunately, I've got a little show and tell today. So Lara, if you would. So Lara, ever the silent partner, displayed footage from the station's security logs. Images flickered across the monitors. The imposter, planting the seeds of chaos in the form of suspicious tech in all the wrong places. See, Voss continued, I'd call this a smoking gun, but it's more a smoking everything. The alien commanders were quiet, the silence as palpable as a slap to the face. Then S.H. Kral spoke, his tone grudgingly impressed. Indeed, Captain, it seems there is more at play than we assumed. Voss allowed herself a moment of triumph, the adrenaline singing in her veins. What say we all take a step back, cool our jets, and maybe plan a meeting that doesn't end in mutual annihilation? Velnica's tone was contemplative. I suppose a diplomatic resolution is preferable to total destruction. Glad you agree, Jackson added, his tone light with relief. Total destruction tends to ruin the weekend. Plus the paperwork is a nightmare. Voss cut the communication, the weight of averted disaster settling on her shoulders like a comfortable coat. All right, team, she said, turning to Jackson and Rook, let's clean up this mess before we all start getting medals or fingers pointed at us. Preferably in that order. The imposter, finally realizing his spotlight was fading, spat defiantly. You think this is over, Voss? You've just bought yourself a reprieve. Reprieve is all I need, Voss replied, unperturbed. A reprieve and a decent night's sleep. Rook chuckled, nudging Jackson. Think she'll get that decent night's sleep? Jackson shook his head, a grin playing on his lips. Not with all of us around. Trouble follows us like a stray dog. With the station system slowly returning to normal, Solara's presence was once again the calm in the storm. Captain, emergency lockdown protocols are lifting. All systems are optimal. Thank you, Solara, Voss said, a hint of gratitude weaving through her words. Now if you could just whip up a celebratory cake, you'd really be my favorite AI. Noted, Captain, Solara replied, almost sounding amused. I will add cake to the station's requisition list. The imposter was escorted away, his bravado crumbling under the weight of his failure, and the control room buzzed with the muted aftermath of crisis. So, Jackson said, leaning back with the air of a man who'd narrowly dodged a bullet, what's next, Captain? Rally the troops, give an inspiring speech. Voss chuckled, the sound more genuine now that the storm had passed. I think we're all inspired enough for one day, maybe just some downtime and a stiff drink. Make mine a double, Rook added, rubbing his head where the bulkhead had left its mark. I need to forget how close I came to being space dust. Voss nodded, the room settling into the quiet hum of recovery, each of them knowing they'd snatched survival from the jaws of chaos. But in the grand, messy dance of the universe, that was just another day on Veridia Station. The Veridia space station was returning to its usual level of chaos, which was to say, organized chaos. The kind that only humans, with their boundless ingenuity and knack for disaster, could ever hope to create and then somehow survive. Captain Area Voss stood in the control room, surveying the aftermath with something that approximated satisfaction. The lights, once blaring red like a nightclub for the damned, were now a calming white, though the hum of the station was still slightly off-tempo, like a song with a skipped beat. "Peace is restored," Jackson Allard announced, leaning against a console like he was posing for a heroic portrait. He ran a hand through his hair, as if the sweat and grime were just a new styling product. "And here I thought today might be boring. Your optimism is both baffling and annoying," Voss replied dryly, though her lips twitched upwards in a micro-smile. "But credit where credit's due, your idiotic charm might have actually saved us." Jackson grinned, tipping an imaginary hat. "Just doing my part for Station and Galaxy." Rook joined them, rubbing the bruise on his temple. "So what's the plan now, Captain? Start knitting a thank you quilt for all the alien factions?" Voss chuckled, her voice rough around the edges like sandpaper doused in whiskey. "I'm thinking more along the lines of getting some sleep before dealing with that circus." The imposter was now a distant memory, a reminder that shadows linger even in space. The station had been inches from catastrophe, yet here they were, still standing like cockroaches after a nuclear apocalypse. Voss surveyed her motley crew, her team of unwitting heroes, and felt a rare moment of pride. Her gaze flicked to the monitors, where Solara's presence was a steady, comforting hum. "Solara," Voss said, the AI name a command and a greeting. "Status report on the station." "Systems are stabilizing, Captain," Solara replied, her voice smooth as ever, like the universe's best customer service rep. "The unauthorized subroutines have been purged, and communication channels are secure. I have initiated self-repair protocols. Never thought I'd say this to a computer, but good job," Voss said, half smiling. "Next time, maybe try not letting the station nearly explode." "I will add that to my list of priorities," Solara replied, with what Voss swore was a hint of sass. Jackson watched the exchange with amused interest. "See, Captain, even the AI gets cheeky." "Must be rubbing off. Let's hope that's the only thing rubbing off," Voss replied, rolling her eyes. "Last thing we need is Solara developing your penchant for reckless diplomacy." A chime from the console interrupted their banter, an incoming message. The alien factions, no doubt eager to discuss the latest fiasco. Voss braced herself, like someone about to dive into a pool of ice water. "SHY Velnica and a few other disgruntled voices," Jackson said, peering at the screen. "Looks like they're ready for another round of Can We Trust the Humans? Guess it's time to play diplomat again." Voss sighed, hitting the button to open the channel. "This is Captain Voss. I trust everyone received the security footage." Commander SHY's gravelly voice came first, his tone surprisingly measured. "We did, Captain, and while skepticism is our default setting with your kind, the evidence is undeniable." "Glad to hear it," Voss said, her voice a cocktail of steel and velvet. "So how about we skip the finger-pointing and get to the part where we all agree not to blow each other up?" Velnica chimed in, her voice like silk over a blade. "Your station has been a source of contention, Captain. But perhaps there's merit in continued alliance." "Ah, music to my ears," Jackson quipped, whispering to Rook. "The sound of aliens agreeing with us almost makes the bruises worth it." "Almost," Rook agreed, "though a little more appreciation wouldn't hurt." Voss nodded, her expression a mixture of gratitude and relief. "I'm glad we're on the same page. Let's work together to ensure this doesn't happen again." "Trust me, I've had enough excitement for a lifetime." The alien voices murmured their assent, which was as close to a group hug as you could get over interstellar radio. With the crisis averted and everyone on speaking terms, Voss cut the communication. "Well, that went surprisingly well," she remarked, turning back to her team. "Looks like humanity's still got a seat at the galactic table." "For now," Jackson replied, his tone light but laced with realism. "You know what they say, today's hero, tomorrow's scapegoat. Let's enjoy the hero bit while it lasts," Voss said with a wry smile. "And maybe let's not wait until the next crisis to plan our next move." The Ayers bled into one another, the station slowly returning to its version of normal. Solara continued her repairs, her presence a constant, comforting hum that underscored their every move. Voss, Jackson, and Rook found themselves in one of the station's few recreation rooms, the sterile environment somehow a welcome change from the chaos of the control room. They sat around a table, nursing cups of whatever passed for coffee in space. "To surviving yet another day," Rook said, raising his cup in a toast. "And to Area Voss, savior of the station." Voss snorted, raising her own cup. "If I'm a savior, we're all in serious trouble. But cheers to not dying, I'll drink to that." "Not dying's a good baseline for success," Jackson agreed, clinking his cup against theirs. "So what's next for the galaxy's least likely peacekeepers, besides getting out of this tin can and finding a real drink?" Rook asked, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "Maybe we could start a band. We'll call ourselves the Surviving Idiots. Fitting, Voss said, grinning. But first, I think we've earned a little downtime. Downtime sounds nice, Jackson said, leaning back against his chair with a sigh. Though I doubt the universe will let us rest for long. Ain't that the truth? Rook muttered, sipping his drink and making a face. This stuff is terrible. Yeah, Voss agreed, swirling her cup and peering into it like it might reveal the secrets of the universe. But it's our terrible. Somehow that makes it bearable. As they sat in companionable silence, the weight of their recent adventure slowly lifting, Solara's voice broke the quiet. Captain, I have calculated the projected repairs and system optimizations. We will be fully operational within 24 hours. Thanks, Solara, Voss replied, feeling a strange sort of fondness for the AI. Any chance those optimizations include improving the coffee? I will see what I can do, Solara replied, her tone almost playful. Never thought I'd see the day we'd be bantering with an AI like it's an old friend, Jackson remarked, shaking his head. What a time to be alive. Yeah, Rook agreed, a wry smile on his lips. And what a crew to be alive with. The days that followed were a flurry of activity, the Veridia space station finding its equilibrium once more. Diplomats came and went, treaties were discussed, and the station's role as a hub of interstellar politics was reaffirmed. Voss, ever the reluctant hero, found herself at the center of this whirlwind, her leadership tested and proven in the crucible of crisis. Jackson and Rook, meanwhile, found their own roles within this newly stabilized chaos. Jackson's charm and diplomacy became invaluable as the aliens warmed to the idea of human ingenuity. Rook's knack for navigating the station's underbelly and his ability to diffuse tension with a well-timed joke made him a favorite among the crew. And through it all, Solara remained the station's steadfast guardian, her AI mind weaving together the threads of their fragile peace like a digital seamstress. One evening, as the artificial lights dimmed to simulate night, Voss found herself alone in the control room. She gazed out at the stars beyond, the endless expanse of space a reminder of both their insignificance and their potential. Solara, she said, breaking the solitude. Any updates from our alien friends? Positive responses continue to come in, Captain, Solara replied. It seems humanity's role in the galaxy is solidifying as one of ingenuity and peacekeeping. Voss smirked, shaking her head. Who'd have thought us peacekeepers? Guess there's hope for us after all. There is always hope, Solara agreed, even in the darkest reaches of space. Voss chuckled, her eyes still on the stars. Remind me to give you a raise, Solara. I'll add it to the list, Captain, Solara replied, her voice a soft echo in the quiet room. Voss stood there for a while longer, the weight of leadership and responsibility a familiar companion. But there was a new lightness to it now, a sense of possibility that hadn't been there before. She turned away from the stars, ready to face whatever challenges might come next, confident in her crew and in the fragile peace they'd fought to protect. After all, in a universe that thrived on chaos, they were doing pretty damn well.